Welcome everybody. We'll be getting started very shortly. I'm just waiting for people to filter into the room. So bear with us for 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, while we're all filtering in, firstly, welcome everyone. Please note a few housekeeping rules. It will not be possible to unmute your microphone, unfortunately. However, we encourage you to use the Q&A section for questions, and indeed the chat for any comments and to share links if you have them. The event will be recorded and published on the ESCAP YouTube website channel as well, so you can always go back and use that recording there. Also, you'll be receiving a short survey after the event, and we'd be really grateful if you could share your thoughts to help us identify topics and products that are important to you. As I mentioned shortly, this first InnovaTea conversation is the inaugural one, but we're planning to have kind of monthly conversations around innovation policy. So topics that are of interest to you would be highly appreciated, so that we can pick them up as well. I'm looking at the time, but actually let's get started now, given we only have an hour and quite a packed agenda. But firstly, welcome all to the inaugural InnovaTea webinar, and I must confess I was a little skeptical about the name InnovaTea. However, we did run a survey of a group of millennials, and the name went down very well. So how could we possibly argue with that? So we're sticking with it. So InnovaTea is a new channel of the Asia Pacific Research and Training Network on STI policy, or ARNet and STI, which aims to share insights and practical means to design and implement science, technology, and innovation, or STI policies for inclusive and sustainable development. The open monthly webinars, which we plan to host under the umbrella of InnovaTea, are designed for government officials and researchers eager to stay informed about emerging ideas, effective practices, useful tools, and key research findings to promote STI to build back better. Today, at our inaugural conversation on innovation policy, we will explore how together we can develop a new vision for Asia and the Pacific to harness technology and innovation to build back better. For today's discussion, we have several leading voices from government, academia, and civil society to give us some pointers on this vision. But most importantly, we want to hear from you. And we are inviting all of you participating in this webinar today to do 2 specific things. I think first, we want you to share your insights on what should be our vision to harness technology and innovation to build up better. And please use the chat function to do that, and be very proactive and not shy in putting forward your suggestions on how we could achieve that. And secondly, we'd like you to tell us how ESCAP and the broader ARNet and STI community can best support you by replying to a short survey, as I mentioned, which will be sent to you by email after this event. So before we move on to the panel discussion, to kick off the event today, I now have the honor to welcome Mr Kaveh Zahedi, Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCAP, to share some perspectives on how we could harness STI in the Asia Pacific to build back better. Kaveh, over to you.
Great, many thanks to you, Jonathan, to Marta, to all the colleagues that have organized this event for us, and also my personal thanks to the panelists who have taken the time to join us today from across the Asia Pacific region, and to share with us their insights. You know, busy as we all are with sort of the daily adjustments that we've had to make to cope with and function in the age of COVID, it is sometimes hard to step back and appreciate the phenomenal role that science, technology, and innovation are playing in almost every aspect of our response to the pandemic. Science, for example, has given us a multitude of vaccines at record speed. Innovation has meant that some of these same vaccines work in ways that we've never seen before. And of course, technology is at the heart of testing, tracking, and not to mention enabling us to do this and to work and to study in a virtual world that is likely to outlast the pandemic. But the success of science, technology, and innovation that we are relying on during the pandemic is really built on years, if not decades, of STI policies and STI investments. Whether it's the capacity to produce vaccines for as yet unknown diseases, or the digital infrastructure to access work, school, government, and the jobs of tomorrow, STI really needs that long-term foresight. And if science, technology, and innovation is to help countries to recover from this massive shock and to build back better, then STI policies themselves are also in need of some innovation. Countries need to build technological and innovation capabilities that can solve the pressing economic, social, and environmental challenges of our time, from pandemics like we're seeing now to climate change, from aging societies to rampant inequality and vulnerability in our region. In short, innovation policies must now move beyond the narrow economic concerns and drive inclusive, resilient, and sustainable development. What does this mean? Well, this means sharing the benefits of advances in STI. It means focusing on the needs of those bearing the burden of this and potentially future crises. And it means building future economies that care for the natural ecosystems that often underpin those very same economies. And what does this require? Well, it requires collaboration to move policy to practice, to learn and adapt quickly, and to generate transformative change. As the UN Secretary General said, 2021, and I quote, 2021 must be the year we move from despair to hope, from business as usual to transformation, end quote. And that is very much the essence of the InnovaTea series. It is to provide a platform for our region to showcase and hopefully in a small way also inspire that transformation. And for our part, ESCAP's work on STI policies is now also attempting to transform itself and to focus around 4 core areas that we believe are vital for the transformation of the region. The first of those is that we are promoting STI policies that bring more inclusive outcomes. We are consciously seeking to promote STI for all. We're promoting business solutions that benefit people and the planet, as well as the bottom line. And we are supporting STI policies that address the needs of those at the base of the economic pyramid and engaging in low-income communities. And we're also introducing an inclusive lens in our advice to governments and seeking to reduce the risks and increase the governance of frontier technologies. So promoting STI policies that really bring more inclusive outcomes. Second of all, we are supporting digital transformations. What does it mean? Well, in addition to promoting access to internet broadband across Asia Pacific, we are investing in digital solutions that bring access, for example, to finance for women entrepreneurs, building skills for the digital economy, and supporting national digital economy strategies, again, with an inclusive lens. Thirdly, we're building partnerships with governments, academia, private sector, and development partners. And we're very pleased to see so many of them joining us today. We're working with academia to elevate the outcomes of research and help inform policies. We work with the private sector to direct future economies towards inclusive and sustainable development. And we work with development partners to generate change and change at scale. We're also expanding ArtNet on STI to amplify research that helps inform policies, to support cross-country policy learning, and to expand access to training to those of you designing technology and innovation policies. And finally, we are in a way reimagining how to provide advice on innovation policies and experimenting with new ways of designing these same innovation policies. For example, by using human-centric design and co-creation processes that result in more relevant policies, impactful policies, and greater policy adoption and implementation. We're also supporting complementary activities to increase the chances of getting sound policies actually adopted and implemented. This includes supporting research that helps inform policies in novel domains, training policy developers to enable them to make policy decisions, and working intensively with local, national, regional stakeholders to ensure that policy translates into action and ultimately into impact. To build back better, which is the title of our session today, the next generation innovation policies must focus on what truly matters, bring transformative change, and address the legitimate concerns of direct and diverse stakeholders. And the panelists today, our wonderful panelists here today, are here to help us understand how to turn this large, vast ambition into reality and hopefully answer the many questions on our minds. What exactly does it mean to harness STI to build back better? How can we support governments to put into action policies that promote science, technology, and innovation for building back better? How can the policymakers joining us today develop timely and relevant innovation policy responses? What would enable the researchers who are with us to convert the policy analysis they do into real action? And how might we collaborate across sectors and indeed across countries and governments to bring change at scale? And we have many, many questions and really a very ambitious agenda, as Jonathan has said. And all of us at ESCAP really are looking forward to hearing from our panelists and from our audience on how we can harness science, technology, and innovation to build back better. And with that, again, thank you to all those joining. And Jonathan, I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Kaveh, for laying out the context, the challenges, the opportunities, and the vision to harness STI to build back better, and for putting down some very practical but difficult questions for our panelists to tackle. So I'm glad I'm not on the panel for this one. But before we move on, let me quickly introduce our panel to kind of again react to the comments and vision that Kaveh has outlined, and indeed to answer some more specific questions. So let me first start by introducing our panel. First, we have Dr. Kanchana Wanichkorn, Vice President of the Office of National Higher Education and Science Research and Innovation Policy Council, NXPO of Thailand. Dr. Kanchana is a good friend of ESCAP and indeed a founding member of ARTNet and STI. Next, we have Dr. Chi Ung Song, Senior Research Fellow and Vice President of the Science and Technology Policy Institute, or STEPI, in the Republic of Korea. Dr. Song is another good friend of ESCAP and a long-term partner of ours on STI policy, as well as, again, a founding partner of ARTNet on STI. Next, we have Ms. Tina Jabeen, CEO and Managing Director of Startup Bangladesh, which is an initiative of the Ministry of ICT of the Government of Bangladesh. Again, Tina is also a good friend of ESCAP. and we are currently working together to support women-led startups in Bangladesh. Next, we have Dr. Christopher Tremewan, Secretary General of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, or APRU. Again, repeating myself, Chris is yet another good friend of ESCAP. And we've worked together over the past few years on promoting specifically AI for social good. And indeed, APRU is also a founding member of ARTNet and STI. And last but not least, we have Ms Neth Daño, Director Asia of the ETC Group in the Philippines. Neth is not only a good friend of ESCAP, but of the wider UN family, having been a member of the UN Secretary General's 10-member advisory group on STI. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for your time, and let's dive straight in. And maybe let me turn to Dr. Kanchana first. As Vice President of the Policy Council guiding the future innovation policy of Thailand, what are some of the key policy areas that you are focusing on how to harness STI to build back better? So again, pointing to one of the direct questions that Kaveh asked. So Kanchana, over to you for some thoughts on that question.
Thank you, Jonathan. I have 2 points for a what and how, and I think I'll start with the how on this, build back better. I think first thing first, we really need to look at STI as an investment, not expenditure. In particular, at this time, with countries would experience budget cuts because of this, economic slowdown, and it tends to be that the STI budget will be the one that the budget we will look at first and try to cut it first. But we really have to change the mindset, change the thinking that STI is investment, for growth, not expenditure. And I think we see at least good trend in Thailand that the private sector, they know that they need to invest in STI, in R&D for growth. That's first thing that keep me busy on trying to package this investment portfolio. So we really need to change from looking at a project-based type of investment and to more like a mission-oriented with result-oriented outcome and impact, meaning that we have to plan beyond research and development, but also look at bringing research to impact, to commercialization, to utilization, that would, have to link with the midstream and downstream agencies to manufacturing. So mission-oriented policy. And I think for government in Thailand, we have to change our role. Instead of just doing it by ourselves, government will switch to become a facilitator. We promote more public-private partnership program, and also breaking the silos between ministry, trying to come up with a good cross-ministry coordination mechanism. And also, I'm not sure about other country, but in Thailand, the budgeting cycle is annual budgeting. So this is one thing that to accelerate the impact, we really need to look at multi-year planning and multi-year budgeting and block grant. So these are the how that we're trying to advocate and change the mindset of policymaker and implementer. So that's my first point on the how. In terms of the what, some of you might have heard Thailand 0.0 policy that the government has launched a few years ago, which have highlights on key strategic sectors. But with the COVID-19, we have revisited that priorities. And recently, the Thai government has just announced our national agenda, which sort of a focus, a refocus on the S-curve or the strategic industry, the 10S curve. It's so-called BCG, Bio-Circular and Green Economy model, which also look at inclusiveness and also competitiveness. As you all know, bioeconomy, it's value creation from bio-based resources. This would also use Thailand's strength in also not only bioresources, but also cultural diversity. On the circular economy, we think that once we need to add value to these bioresources, we have to keep in mind about this concept of circularity, the loop of sustainable resource use, and also a green economy. It's something that we have been, advocating for some years, that we really need to look at the environmental friendly production. So those are the key concepts, the new growth model. I noticed that I almost used up my 5 minutes. So on the what again, I think from a 10S curve, we now look at 4 key sectors on our strength on food and agriculture, energy, biochemical, health, and medical, and tourism and creative economy. And also using the concept of digital transformation, cut across all these 4 sectors, and also the circular economy concept. So with that, my last point is the inclusiveness aspect is incorporated into the policy design and implementation mechanism. We have to look at both, the agencies, the stakeholder that we call maybe top of the pyramid, that have ability to absorb advanced science and technology that can create a high value added product and services. Those probably not many big firm, medium firm, but we also in the policy design, we also look at the bottom of the pyramid, where just appropriate technology and productivity improvement might be the key goal. So that's I mentioned the how is the BCG, these 4 sectors. And with that, we have a plan, like I mentioned, mission-oriented with the end goals, and then trying to do policy coordination and implementation across ministry and sectors. I'll stop for now for my first round. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Kanchana. So many good points in there around what a next generation innovation policy would look like. I think you're quite right. This changing the narrative away from expenditure to investment, I think is a critical sell, if you like, policymakers need to give. Again, I agree, this movement from STI policy, more from experimentation to mission driven, absolutely. And of course, the BCG model in Thailand is exactly what we mean by moving beyond the economic imperative in many ways, and looking at the 3 dimensions of sustainable development. So thank you very much for sharing those insights and remarks. Let me next turn to Dr. Song, and I'd be really interested if you could share with us maybe 1 or 2 crucial experiences on how the Republic of Korea, which is one of the most advanced technology countries in the world, has harnessed STI to respond to COVID-19. So I'm very grateful for your experience sharing on that, Dr. Song. Over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Most of all, thank you for having me to this webinar, and also Jonathan, thank you for your very kind introducing me. Can I share my document here, or you can you see this document?
I can see the picture.
Picture, right?
A lot of Korean words that I don't understand.
Oh, really? Just a moment, please. Sorry. Let me. Okay.
You see your screen, Dr. Song?
I think I have to just talk about this.
Okay.
I'm in the Science and Technology Policy Institute, but I'm not that good at technology, so sorry for this inconvenience. Actually, when I received the questionnaire from you, so I was in dilemma. What do I have to say about the critical experience? And as a policy researcher, I have to talk about the big picture at this moment because I have very limited time span, just 5 minutes. The Korean government actually announced its Korean New Deal. Actually, in order to respond to the challenge caused by the COVID-19. And in this Korean New Deal, the Korean government has set up 3 very big picture, big policies. First one is Green New Deal. Second one is the Digital New Deal. Third one is the stronger safety net, actually. In Digital New Deal, we have 3 key projects: data dam, AI government, and smart healthcare. In Digital and Green New Deal, we have green and smart schools, a digital twin, digitalization of SOCs, all the associates, as transportation, logistics, and a highway, railroad, and everything. And smart and green industrial complexes. For Green New Deal, the Korean government set 3 key projects: green remodeling, green energy, and eco-friendly mobility of the future. And also the Korean government announces that the Korean government will invest more than $100 billion in order to achieve these goals. So everything is included in this big picture, the Korean New Deal. So not only science and technology, but also in everything, the education, healthcare, and the bio, and every industry, every infrastructure, new digitalization, and for the new stage of the lifestyle in our country. And also the Korean government wants to boost the development of untapped industry and untapped business. And nowadays, many Korean people actually, they use the smartphone when they order the food and grocery delivery. So nowadays it's kind of a new business. So the Naver, Kakao, and in any other IT kind of companies, they really grew up very fastly. So they have very big shares at this moment in Korean economy. So yes, that's, I have to say at this moment. So if you have any more specific questions regarding the Korean New Deal, the Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and the stronger safety net. And for the stronger safety net, Korean government wants to provide more security on the job and the employment, and also they want to provide more social benefits to the people who suffered more seriously because of the COVID-19. That's Korean government's policy. So yes, let me talk more details when I have specifications and next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Song. I know in the future InnovaTea sessions, we want a dedicated session on Korea's COVID-19 response. But I think, as you outlined it there, the Green Deal, the digital deal, and the stronger safety net, I'd be very interested to find out more how these policies integrate with each other, because I think that's how we get the economic, the social, the environmental kind of working in harmony in terms of policy. So thank you very much for sharing those thoughts. Let me now turn to Tina, who, if anyone thinks working in government is not innovative and entrepreneurial, Tina bucks that trend. Tina is working with some of the coolest startups and entrepreneurs in Bangladesh. So my question to you, Tina, is, as CEO for Startup Bangladesh, you are promoting digital transformations by supporting digital startups. What are, in your view, the 3 critical digital innovations that will help us to build back better? And what key elements do you build, do you see I need to build domestic digital capabilities? I know that's a very difficult couple of questions to answer in 5 minutes, but I'll put that challenge to you, Tina. I'm sure you're capable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and a very heartfelt gratitude to ESCAP and ArtNet STI for hosting this. It's been a real pleasure for us to work with ESCAP in the last couple of years in this area, especially on women empowerment, economic empowerment, and we are looking forward to working together a lot more to facilitate and promote exactly what we are talking today, digital innovations and how we can use that to transform millions of lives in Bangladesh. So a very, very heartfelt thanks to the organizers. Just very quickly about Bangladesh and the startup, since you talked about startup, Jonathan. So startup ecosystem is very new in Bangladesh. It's a very, very nascent ecosystem, probably about 7-8 years old. We have almost 2,500 startups right now. There are a lot more, but the more mature startups are about 2,500, 1,000 active startups. And 200 startups are coming up every year. Even though the ecosystem is new, it has generated almost 1.5 million jobs directly and indirectly, brought in more than 38 million just in 2020 and this year. These are small numbers if you compare to the larger economies and whatnot, but for us these are huge accomplishments. And the reason I share this is because the government's focus on innovation has a huge role in it, and also to develop and foster the startup ecosystem. So what we learned from COVID is that we have leapfrogged the country, and even the last mile clients in some cases leapfrogged into digital transformations, where bKash, things like MFS such as bKash and Rockets and whatnot in the financial fintech area is a common name all over Bangladesh, even in the villages. So what we did is during COVID last year, we did a survey and a research post-COVID roadmap, which is now going to be incorporated in our 2021 ICT policy. And what came out of it is that the 3 critical digital innovations that we need to really look at is, obviously making sure the supply chain is right, because we don't want our, farmers back in the villages, all those the products going to waste. But in the city, people are paying high price. And also making sure that, the women entrepreneurs can sell their product through e-commerce platforms. So, supply chain is a big item that came, making sure that, we use supply chain technology to build a very, very robust and powerful supply chain, so that during a disaster, we can continue with all our work. Health has been a huge area, and one of the success story is that, as Shurokkha platform, Shurokkha means protected in English, Platform came out, which is developed by the ICT Ministry, which is the platform which is being used for the COVID vaccination. Mental health under the health care and well-being has came up as one of the critical factors. We all know how COVID affected people and the mental well-being of of people. The other thing is that came out of this work is that we have to make sure that there is inclusive digital access, basically, addressing the digital divide, digital equity, so that we come up with all the solutions. But if my BOP clients cannot get to the medical services or the telemedicine services because they don't have the digital device, or that cannot afford the bandwidth, all is going to be wasted. So these are some of the factors that we thought that is going to be very, very important, so we can have a more sustainable and resilient economy and overall system, so that when there is a disaster, we are ready. And somehow we are seeing that things that we have put in place last year in response to COVID with the second wave, our platforms and systems, government and private, is a lot more prepared. So we are not in so much despair as we were back in 2020 March. So we are working through all our challenges, but at least we are going to the right directions. So those are some of the comments I wanted to make under the three critical digital innovations. Startup Bangladesh is playing its role, as you said, Jonathan, that we are working with startups. So one of our role is to finance and fund startups, basically as a venture capital fund. And the other thing is to drive national policies. One of the focus is to come up with a national startup policy, so that the startups who are very agile, using technology to bring transformative changes to millions of lives at scale, can really do what they want to do, can be sustainable. They're bringing products which is ready for the market. We are also making sure that we bring the right policies, the right technology, the right partners. Gender lens is a very, very important area for Startup Bangladesh, and we are working with ESCAP. My friend Diana Morris there, I'm sure she's listening in. We are working with her team to make sure that we use gender lens to bring in startups who are with women founders, underrepresented communities, and such things like that. One of the other things that I wanted to mention is that what are some of the key elements to build the digital capabilities? Of course, in a country like Bangladesh, although we are the 9th largest mobile user market in the world, with the 8th largest population, affordable bandwidth is still an issue. So we need to make sure that we address that challenge. Digital literacy also came out from that work that we did, so that our BOPs and the last mile clients, they have digital literacy, so that the students, the primary students back in the villages, can actually access the education platforms. They have the device, they have the bandwidth, and they know how to use it. And also we have to make sure that we have a very supportive policy for our entrepreneurs, for women entrepreneurs, and also to ensure that there is funding. So these are some of the key factors that I wanted to share with you. And then also quick comment about what Startup Bangladesh is doing, especially on the education area. We have, because online education is what's going on with our education ministry. Of course, our schools are now closed. We have brought in about 15 some startups who are developing the education, the online education materials, the classrooms, content, everything. So that, since last year, when everything went online, these startups are actually providing online education content which is compliant to the national curriculum text for National Curriculum Board. And then also telemedicine is a big area where we are supporting our mental well-being startups. So that's all I wanted to share for now, but I'm sure, you know, there would be questions and opportunity to share more in the future. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Tina. And you're testament to what we mean by inclusive innovation policy. Just the language you use. I mean, you mentioned reaching the villages first, engaging women, engaging rural farmers. You talked about affordability of technology and innovation. I mean, I wish all countries in Asia Pacific who we work with, when they're dealing with digital policies, use this language, because this is exactly what we mean. And again, we look forward to supporting you in the future and indeed spreading some of these policy lessons with other countries in the region as they look to kind of embed inclusivity within their policies. And you've very practically just laid out how it's possible to do that. So thank you so much. And now let me turn to Chris to give if you like, a perspective from academia. Chris, my question to you is, how might we promote research that helps inform policies on some of the critical global issues and emergently and rapidly evolving technologies of our time, such as AI, to ensure that we harness the potential of technology while minimizing the risks? Because of course, as you know, with 4IR and indeed AI, there are risks. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, and thank you to ESCAP and to my fellow panelists for some very insightful contributions. Let me just very briefly outline a little bit about APIU's work and what we've learned from it to date and where we're going. I've already put on the chat just where you can access more information about us, but basically we're soon to be 60 research universities around the Pacific Rim. And I guess we have something over 150,000 active researchers in total in our membership and over 2 million students or more. So we act as a super connector across all these institutions in terms of a region which is extremely diverse with geophysical risks that are shared in the Pacific Ring of Fire. The geopolitical tensions, of course, are shared. And the economic dynamism in normal times is also something that marks out the region. But the research areas that we are currently engaged in are, you know, as has been mentioned, artificial intelligence for social good, which we do with the UN ESCAP, and Asia Pacific Women in Leadership, global health, crisis management, particularly in public health at this stage with COVID-19, sharing the learnings that we've all had across various economies. Natural hazards, extreme events, disaster risk reduction, sustainable waste management, population aging, and several others. So from this, what are the things that, in terms of research, that will enable to build back better and manage risk of new technologies? I guess I'd list the following points. First, we've learned from our collaborations together that the importance of multidisciplinarity. People think of innovation technology and they think of the sciences and engineering and medicine, which is right. But we also have to think of understanding society and its diverse context. So the human sciences and the humanities are vital. So in coming to solutions, and those of you engaged in public policy will know that you actually need to know the people and the societies you're dealing with in depth and the history and so on. So multidisciplinarity, because this is so important to real solutions rather than just some kind of technical fix. So we emphasize collaborating across boundaries of all kinds, not just discipline, but also issues of socioeconomic status, culture, religion, and so on. But also we find that this becomes really useful and impactful if we focus on the global challenges that we all face in different ways and how to understand the different ways we face them. So that would be first a kind of multidisciplinarity emphasis and a focus on global challenges as a result. The second would be something that we all agree with here, I think, and that is a new way of being multilateral, a new multilateralism. in a time when there's a large degree of techno-nationalism emerging and universities are in the center of that, how do we create neutral platforms for collaboration and building of trust? So this also has to take account of different contexts and the fact that solutions cannot be reached in isolation, no matter what the particular geopolitical objectives may be of governments. We need each other. So that's where the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN have a particular salience, because many of these research areas are related to them. The third area would be the public interest, which I've already implied. COVID-19 has taught us that we must act decisively in the public interest, not in silos, not in just our favorite research areas, but we must have a sense of urgency about the problems our societies face and that we face together. There must be a public accountability in this process, not just the researchers and universities, but the technologies themselves must be applied and owned in ways that are accountable to the public, and as already mentioned, that they benefit those who need them most, not just those who have the money to pay for them. So I think that alarm has told me that I'm already 5 minutes, but let me just add one other thing, and that is partnerships. Universities and research institutions cannot do this without partnering with government, with the private sector, with non-government organizations. So those are the things I would bring to the fore: multidisciplinarity, multilateralism, the public interest, and of course within public interest is also ethics and partnerships. And of course, in this time, we've learned virtual technology has enabled us to actually engage a lot more people who often couldn't afford to fly different places to conferences in various thematic meetings and coming to solutions. And this has also taught us that students need to be engaged in research from an early stage. We shouldn't ignore them until they're graduates. We should engage the young, altruistic young people who are already concerned existentially about the future, like climate change. And these things, I think, bring together the learnings we've had in the last year or two from our research collaborations across the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for those very succinct 4 points, and that very kind reminder that technology is indeed political, which has its pros and cons, as we well know. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. Let me now turn to Neth. As Director of Asia at ETC Group, and of course as a former member of the UN Secretary General's 10-member advisory board, you've been really stressing the importance over a number of years now of the importance of recognizing different sources of knowledge, gender issues, and grassroots innovations when discussing new technologies. Why are these points important to harness technology for inclusive and sustainable development? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jonathan. I'd like to thank Chris for laying down the ground for my presentation, and yeah, saying that very clearly. Technology is political, and technology happens in society, not in a vacuum. So as Chris pointed out, technology is real technology that provides genuine solution, is multidisciplinary. When we say recognizing diverse sources of knowledge, it's just not just about a single source of knowledge, but broad. Like when we say sources, it could be formal, institutional, which means public or private institutions, and also informal and community sources of knowledge, which is actually often not recognized as a source of knowledge, which is also flabbergasting because the UN has already recognized this across the decades in many documents. So governments, the international institutions, the UN as an institution have recognized that knowledge comes from different sources, not just institutional knowledge. And we have a number of documents in the UN multilaterally agreed that establish this. We have the Convention on Biodiversity in the area of biodiversity, and more recently we have the document coming from Rio Plus 20 that established a technology facilitation mechanism. And we also have much more recently and much more focused the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Rights of Peasants and smallholders that are enshrined in the UN. So it's not an invention. It's something that is recognized, and all we need is actually recognize and implement it. And as we go through halfway of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, let's not lose sight that the main vision of this agenda is about leaving no one behind. And when we say leaving no one behind, it's not just about pulling those at the bottom, but enabling everyone, especially those that are being left behind, especially now where the gap between rich and poor countries and within countries are widening. In the last 16 months of the pandemic, we've never seen such a widening of gaps. So this is all the more important and urgent to ensure that no one leaves behind. And that means not just pulling up, as I said, but enabling everyone, particularly those that are being left behind, to achieve sustainable development in a sustainable way. It's not just about sustainable development, but ensuring genuineness and sustainability. And we can only assure that if the innovation, science, and technology that we're using as a tool to deliver, to achieve the SDGs are appropriate to the own condition of people who will be using these technologies. As Chris pointed out, we're not just talking about technological fixes when we talk of science, technology, and innovation. What we're talking about here are actually genuine solutions that enable people to develop and innovate as well, not just leave this to a specialized group of experts. Second reason why this diverse sources of knowledge is important is that it's a way, it's a very clear and concrete way to recognize people, communities in particular, as part of the solution, not just as recipients of knowledge coming from the sky or coming from the formal system, but really recognizing that traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge systems, local knowledge, those tried and tested knowledge systems and innovation that are proven to be environmentally sound, culturally appropriate, and specific, in many cases, have allowed communities to adapt to development challenges and also to changing conditions. I don't have to enumerate examples of that. There are too many. Third reason is that it's a way to recognize the capacities of peoples and communities as co-creators of knowledge, and also recognizing that collective knowledge has evolved over generations and across communities, and can be useful and have enabled communities to respond to changing conditions, as I've mentioned earlier. Also, that this recognition of diverse sources of knowledge will allow sustaining the development of capacities of communities to innovate, not just about uptake of technologies or innovations from outside, but to innovate in a real way and sustainable way as co-creators of knowledge systems. And I think those who are involved in knowledge systems and even technology and innovation would know that those that stay, those technologies and innovation that stay, are those where people have been part of its creation, where they've seen and tested how useful these technologies are, and allows them to innovate. It's not a lock-in, that once you get it, you cannot even repair it. Those technologies don't last. Like we've seen hundreds of mechanisms and technologies that were sold to developing countries that were rusting because once they failed to operate, no one can repair that. So this recognition of diverse knowledge systems recognize that people have that capacity, have the potential to understand, to repair, and to innovate based on their in response to development challenge that they face at the local level. And lastly, recognizing diverse sources of knowledge will also pave the way for allowing participatory evaluation or assessment of knowledge systems. Like in the end, it's the users and the communities who will be impacted, who are seen as the users of technologies, who should have a say, whether these technologies are useful, and also to anticipate, to be able to anticipate the impact, whether that's positive or benefit on the community. And it's also the role of institutions like ESCAP, for example, to enable communities to see what's in the horizon, like to see and be informed on what's happening in other communities or countries where these technologies have been adopted, and inform people about this so they can consider this information in evaluating and deciding on whether to adopt or deploy technology. So I end my input there, looking forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Neth. And firstly, thank you for being such an advocate of these really important agendas, again, but both globally in New York and actually regionally through the Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development as well. It's always helped our cause within my team for you to champion these agendas with STI policy. Certainly, I think that the point you made around not just bringing those left behind with us, but enabling them and co-creating them with them is a really important point. And it'd be interesting in the future for us to explore how actually that manifests itself in an STI policy. You know, how do we practically go about doing that? So we look forward to you in the future in delving deeper there. We have a remarkably kept quite good time at the moment, which is quite rare for me. But we have time for a few questions now. And let me just check my phone here. The team is sending me through. There's a first question on how do governments prioritize which STI areas to invest in, given that there are so many. Maybe for this one, can I turn to our government folk first? So maybe Dr. Kanchana and Tina. Again, how do you make decisions around where to invest in STI? I know it's a difficult question, and I'm only giving you a minute or two as well. But maybe Dr. Kanchana first, and then over to Tina.
Well, that's art and science, I think. They are top down and bottom up, I would say. For STI, in case of Thailand, we still have to align our policy direction and priority with the national economic and social development plan. So that's sort of like the top level, big umbrella for national development direction. So from there, usually, you know, we as science and technology, it's an enabler, it's a platform for you know, enhanced sector development, industrial development, or address societal challenges, and, you know, planning for human capacity development. So that one direction that, you know, we have to comply, align with national goals. We also have bottom up approach that we open for you know, researcher communities to also propose agenda to policy making. And there are different criteria, you know, for like basic research, applied research, long-term, and you know, short and medium-term impact. So different criteria that has been applied. I hope that help. There's no I think rigid criteria. I think prioritization, agenda setting, and prioritization, you know, change a lot along the time. In particular for this COVID pandemic, you know, most of the resources we have to realign ourselves and adjust to building resilience and build back the economic you know, growth.
Great, thank you, Dr. Kanchana. Tina, over to you for some quick thoughts.
Sure, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for the question. Bangladesh has a very specific, you know, national perspective plan, which is basically the national development goals. And one of the main thrust factor is using technology, and which is kind of being promoted by the Digital Bangladesh campaign. I'm sure, you know, you have heard about it, which is basically using technology to develop Bangladesh so that it becomes a middle income country, and then, you know, a developed nation by 2041. So under these, you know, there are very specific areas using technology, specific areas, industry sectors that we need to develop. And some of the areas, top priority areas, is basically human resource development. You know, I talked about digital literacy. So how we want to make sure that, you know, the BOPs knows how to use technology. So that is one. So human resource development, you know, using, going from primary schools to, you know, up to the universities, making sure that we are the people, they are they're ready to use the technology, and not just that, but also, you know, good programmers, good software developers, engineers, so that, you know, the economy is more of a innovation-driven economy. The other sector is, you know, obviously fintech, right? So we can address the challenge of financial inclusion, and definitely agri-tech, because, you know, it's one of the biggest sector is obviously agriculture. And all of these, you know, the Digital Bangladesh strategy basically now feeds into the National Perspective Plan, which is what drives the overall development thrust areas for the country. And I just wanted to mention very quickly that, you know, Digital Bangladesh campaign is, you know, obviously run by or headed by our National ICT Advisor, Mr. Shajib Wajid Joy. And the ICT Ministry is basically overseeing it, which is headed by our very, very dynamic ICT Minister, Mr. Zunaid Ahmed Polo. The third point is that, you know, our Honorable Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, is a huge proponent of women empowerment, so that looped into all of this is making sure that, you know, we have women empowerment agendas and programs and everything in all our different developmental programs. Thank you, Jonathan.
Great, thank you so much. We're running short of time, but there's one question in the chat around South-South cooperation, and let me just build on that a bit more. And I'd be very interested in getting quick reactions from Neth, Chris, and Dr. Song on this one. As Chris mentioned, I mean, technology is very political now, you know, and we are, as ESCAP, a regional organization, which is about regional cooperation. How best do you think we should collaborate on technology, given this new age of multilateralism? Again, very quick reactions, Neth, from you, maybe then Chris, and then final word to Dr. Song.
From me?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for giving me this chance.
We'll go Dr. Song first, Neth, then Chris. Then we'll go that way around. Over to you, Dr. Song.
Yeah, can I speak, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, the ESCAP is a very good platform that the many players can collaborate together with one issue or a few very focused areas. And yes, in terms of science, technology, and innovation, and also inclusive and sustainable kind of development, I think at first we have to more focus on the education. So if we have very good human resources, human capital, good engineers and good technicians and good scientists, we can grow together. And actually, in many cases, scientists, technicians, and engineers, they have very similar kind of a terminology. When they speak with each other, they can understand with each other very easily. Right? So if we have the same pages of the human resources with knowledge and everything, then we can collaborate together. So maybe ESCAP, this types of a network is a very good way of collaborating together. And also maybe if we can tackle some project together, some of the cooperation project together, we can participate in as a person or as an institute, and this would be a very good way of formulating good the cooperation, the multiple cooperation, multilateral cooperation, I think. So education, but at the same time, we have to think about the exit side or output side, how we can provide the job opportunity in our partner countries together. So the foreign direct investment or the joint ventures in our partner countries, and also in Korea, maybe in the next time. So so the education and human resource development, and then maybe direct investment, and also technology transfer and the joint venture would be a very good topic we can tackle together in the future. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Song. Over to you, Neth, very briefly, then Chris. You're muted, Neth.
Thank you so much. Just a few words.
Okay, Chris first.
Chris, thanks. Neth, final word. Over to you, Chris.
Sorry, Neth, I didn't see what was going on.
Off you go, Chris.
Yeah, okay. Well, just to say that in our experience, some of the most costly research happens in places where they can afford it, but often the burden of risk from extreme events or from the pandemic and so lies elsewhere in places where they have deep local knowledge, but not necessarily the resources. So collaborations, this can happen south-south or between developed and developing economies, because to come to solutions, you need to know all contexts. The other thing I would say is that, come to the previous question about prioritizing ST areas to invest in, the question of investment comes when you have global monopolies virtually in ICT, and you need the resources for governments and the public sector to invest. So taxation and regulation come to my mind in terms of public policy to make sure people pay the corporations pay the fair share of funding the solutions. And this means also public accountability so that financial interests cannot influence political decisions to the degree they do now, and therefore South-South collaboration becomes more meaningful in that context. So I raise a number of issues there, I realize, but in terms of the this new area, this new era that we're in, I mean, we have a new economic information order which claims human experience as free raw material for their hidden commercial objectives. And I think we should overcome that through public policy collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And Neth, the final word.
My turn, just very briefly, because Chris also covered some of my responses. I do agree that the most meaningful approach is still South-South collaboration, and there are a lot of potentials to explore other means on how to operationalize South-South collaboration, in particular beyond just governments partnering with each other, but also including civil society and communities, and of course the private sector. And of course we have to also go beyond like a very uniform and very homogeneous definition of what private sector is, because even businesses vary. And ESCAP knows this. Now, there are partnerships with social enterprises, with cooperatives. We should not forget that those entities also innovate and also promote uptake of technology and develop their own technologies that are easily taken up or adopted by government. So, but like emphasizing this does not mean that we're undermining the importance of multilateral processes, that the UN, after all, is made up of states who make the decisions. It's not about who has the fattest wallet, who will make a decision. It's one country, one vote. And there are, of course, fears, like opening up processes for multi-stakeholderism also opens up the room for those with the biggest wallet who makes the decision. We should really avoid that, emphasize the importance of multilateralism. In the same way, platforms like civil society respect that it's the governments who make the final decision, but we have to open up means for other non-state actors to participate in this cooperation.
Great. Thank you, Neth. Dr. Kanchana, I see your hand, but I really have to close now because I'm mindful of the time. But just to say, this is the first in the series of these InnovaTea conversations. We will have many more, but I'm conscious that I'm already over time. But I'd just like to thank all the speakers for a really engaging discussion today. And indeed, thank Kaveh as well for setting the scene, the vision, and indeed the challenge to us all on how we can harness STI to build back better. We've covered so much ground and so many topics that I couldn't possibly summarize. But as I mentioned, this event, it just marks the start of the series, and we'll be delving much deeper into many of the topics that have been outlined today. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more in a lot more detail from the panelists who we have today, so we can spend more time with them and get more insights from them. The next InnovaTea event will be focusing on, Tina will be glad to know, women's entrepreneurship, and in particular the challenges they face in accessing financing and potential solutions. So do join us for that. Finally, just again, a kind reminder to fill out the short survey that will be sent to you soon. We'd be grateful if you could fill that out. And just to say thank you all for joining us today. Thanks again to our panelists and Kaveh for his opening remarks. We look forward to seeing you again and discussing some of these issues in a lot more detail, and stay safe. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye all.